Prologue, Horses in the Desert. The dunes in the desert were shining like precious gems under the relentless heat of the sun. Sitting in one of the rows of seats of his private racetrack, Hannibal Mago lowered his elegant, white hat and observed his guests, a Russian with a large, round stomach like a barrel that had progressively pushed out his jacket and shirt so that only a white undershirt with suspenders remained, and a Chinese man with a serious expression wearing a dark tuxedo and a light coat. Hannibal Mago smiled, held out a hand covered in rings and took a bottle along with 3 glasses to a folding table in front of him. The Russian asked him immediately to refill one of his water glasses that he had downed in one go. "I don't understand why you chose Morocco," he exclaimed. "It's almost 20 degrees and it's January." "In my humble opinion," murmured the Chinese man coldly, "in this season, Morocco is much preferable to Russia. Furthermore, we came here to talk business. This isn't a holiday." With a sigh, the Russian once again let himself fall against the back of his chair. On the racetrack, the jockeys were riding their horses into their exit boxes. Hannibal watched them carefully. All 3 were purebred Arabian horses of very high caliber. Mago's animal was a 3-year-old chestnut filly named Faiza, meaning victory. The Russian's horse was a 4-year-old bay horse, and the Chinese man's had a dark, mixed coat and was also 4 years old. This would be a good race. "How about we all place a bet?" proposed the Russian. "I say that my Liev will win." "I bet $1 million on Gang," replied the Chinese man, while motioning towards his horse with his chin. "I accept the $1 million, concluded Mago. "In favor of Faiza, of course." The 3 criminals clenched their hands tight and turned to watch their animals, who panted and pawed at the ground nervously, ready to take off at full speed. "Begin." The metal cages opened with a loud crack and the 3 purebreds galloped off with great speed while Mago's servants hurried to remove the exit boxes from the track so that they wouldn't serve as obstacles during the second of the 5 total turns forming the 4-kilometer race. When they passed the finish line for the first time, it was already clear that the struggle for first would only be between Faiza and Liev. Gang couldn't keep up with their pace. "All right, let's see what'll happen now," commented Hannibal. After that, a woman climbed the steps of the deserted racetrack and called for his attention. She seemed to be between 40 and 50 years old, but her clear skin was still smooth and perfect like that of a young girl. Long, red hair caressed her shoulders, swaying with each of her steps and the light, warm breeze coming from the desert. She was wearing a simple chain to a golden necklace. Hannibal smiled. "Hello, Memory. Excuse me for bothering you, sir," murmured the woman. "There is an important call for you. It can't wait until the end of the race." "I'm afraid not, sir. It's Agent Grigory. Very urgent." Hannibal rose from his chair and took a break from his guests. "I'm sorry, gentlemen, but my obligations won't allow me to be here to see the end of the race." At this instant, the horses were passing in front of them to start the 4th lap. Liev was in the lead with a solid advance and Faiza was following him as close as she could, even though she seemed to be running out of strength, while Gang was hobbling along far behind. "With all due respect, we already know who the winner will be," the Russian responded with a kind smile. Hannibal smiled also, although it was a smile that was totally different. In a livid manner, he drew an enormous pistol hidden under his jacket and fired 2 shots one after the other. Liev whinnied and lost speed, losing his footing while the jockey spurred him on in vain without understanding what had happened. On one of the horse's hips, a clump of red hair soaked with blood could be seen. Behind him, Gang stopped too and looked, confused, toward the seating area. During this time, Faiza had caught up in the race. When the 5th lap began, her 2 adversaries were faltering, uncertain of their steps. Now, Liev and Gang fell on the track, throwing off their jockeys, who rolled into the sand. "You killed them," cried the Russian while jumping to his feet. "I only put them to sleep," corrected Mago. "The dose was maybe a bit excessive, but when they wake up, they will be better than ever." He took Memory by the arm. "It seems to me that I've won our little bet, gentlemen. Now, you owe me $2 million. It's never bad to give a helping hand," he added with a teasing pout while leaving with the woman. Hannibal followed Memory inside the enormous manor that stood just behind the racetrack, and he stopped in front of a room closed by a large wooden door. The doorknob, made of pure gold, featured the engraving of a bird with 2 emeralds in place of eyes, a green phoenix, the symbol of the green phoenix. Memory stepped to the side to let Mago pass and he entered alone. He went up to the desk in the center of the room on which there was a large, extra-thin monitor. The sharp face of his agent, Grigory Niktopoulos, filled the screen. Hannibal Mago brushed over a button he had under the table to activate a program to mask his voice. I hope for your own well-being that this is really urgent. He crossed his arms in front of his face, causing most of the rings he was wearing to clink against each other. Yes, sir, it is, answered Grigory. The kids brought one of their friends to the place where the supercomputer is located. Hannibal leaned towards the screen. Grigory had his attention from then on. And so, unfortunately, I hadn't put the park at Kadak under surveillance, which is why I needed to do some research, but ultimately, I was able to discover what we would need. Lyoko's supercomputer is located in the underground of an abandoned factory on a small island in the center of the river. The factory is connected to Kadak by a secret passage through the sewers. Grigory smiled. On the iron manhole to access the passage, he continued, and on the walls of the factory, there is the symbol of the phoenix. Hannibal slammed the desk with his fist and his rings gleamed for an instant. I didn't have the slightest doubt, he thundered. That traitor Walter built it with our money. But tell me, this supercomputer, is it activated? No, sir. Do you want me to activate it? Hannibal rose from his seat and shook his head. Don't even think about it. Instead, prepare me a warm welcome, Grigory. I'm leaving immediately. Hannibal shut off the computer with an impatient motion of his hand. He should send away his guests. And quick. From now on, he had much more important things to deal with. Chapter 1, XANA's Fear. The last few days' rain had dissolved the snow, and the tree-lined paths were covered in mud as sticky as glue. The dark gray sky called for yet more rain. The Kadak Park surrounded the three kids, stretching to the imposing rock wall and the iron fence crowned by the symbol of the establishment. To its right stood the school buildings, the student residences, the administration offices, the science laboratories, the classrooms, the cafeteria, and the gymnasium. They were positioned like the prongs of an enormous fork between which the three quadrangles were situated. Elida Hopper was walking in silence beside her friends, Jeremy Belpoise and Eva Skinner. Together, they made a very odd group. Elida, small and with fiery red hair in a pixie cut, was wearing a heavy winter jacket with feathers of the same lively red color. Eva, however, was taller and more strikingly beautiful. She had short, blonde hair, eyes clear as crystals and perfect lips. Then, there was Jeremy, with his typical large cardigan and usual round, geeky glasses sitting slightly off-kilter on his nose. BRR, the young boy trembled. I should have worn a warmer jacket. I'm not cold, remarked Eva. Me neither, confirmed Elida without paying too much attention. She was thinking that her father must have also been to this place before leaving with her to the virtual world. After that, Elida remained trapped in Lyoko for 10 long years, but without growing older by even a single day. She was supposed to be 23 years old, however, she was only 13 now. The more that she thought about it, the more that it seemed like a crazy story to her. Her father, on the other hand. Jeremy was observing her fixedly, eyes full of concern. Do you have something to tell me, Elida? He asked her. The young girl nodded. What she might discover ahead scared her, but she felt that it was time to clear things up. A day has already passed since I found the second secret room in the Hermitage and the replica, she recalled. And up until now, I could only explore the first level of my father's journal. Jeremy nodded in silence, pensively. All right, shouldn't we start our exploration now, the young girl concluded. Elida had entered the journal the other day, and like a ghost, she could observe with her own eyes several fragments of the history of her father and her mother, Anthea. And now, when she felt close to finding answers, Jeremy seemed to be backing out for a reason that she didn't understand. We shouldn't yet, replied the schoolboy. First, we need to be sure that. This is about my father, Jeremy, the young girl exploded. And he is dead. And I don't have any idea where my mother is. Okay, surrendered Jeremy, protecting himself with his hands. You're right, he continued immediately, while smiling at her tenderly. Just let me complete the final verifications. Tonight, we'll meet in my room with all the others. And I promise you that after that, we'll enter the second level of the replica and we'll discover what's in the final part of your father's journal. It's just that it isn't so simple. You need to be a little patient. His friend tried to argue with him, but Jeremy started to head down the path to return to the dorms, hands in his pockets and his neck embedded in his shoulders to protect himself from the cold. Ilita sighed. Jeremy was her best friend, and maybe even more than that, but he could be really stubborn. How about continuing your walk with me? She then asked Eva. Sure thing. Eva Skinner seemed like a young girl like a lot of others, who, at the time, instead of studying, was spending her afternoon with a friend in the school's park. Behind this angelic face though hid a secret that her friends didn't even suspect existed. It was a dangerous secret that lay nested in her for some time now and that obligated her to act and speak in the name of someone else. Or rather, something else. XANA had indeed possessed the young girl, bending her to his will. But at this exact moment, the artificial intelligence inside of her was yelling. Why had she accepted this walk with Ilita? And why hadn't she already attacked her, also giving her the dark kiss that would allow XANA to take over her body? With Aunt Della Robbia, that would have been very simple. The truth was that XANA didn't want to do it. Not to Ilita. And this reluctance, which wasn't absolutely rational, made him furious. But the rage also wasn't in the nature of an artificial intelligence. XANA didn't have feelings. He wasn't programmed to have them. So, in this case, why did he feel this strange warmth when Ilita had asked Eva, and him in extension, that they should continue to walk together? Stop, spoke XANA 56,780 x 75,678 equals 4,296,996,840. Good. At least his ability to calculate was functioning correctly. 6 times 2 equals 12. XANA reflected on it for a fraction of a second as if paralyzed. 6 times 2 equals 12, he repeated again. The result was correct, of course, but the problem was elsewhere. He didn't calculate it through multiplication, he based it on memory. And not his memory, but on the memories of Eva Skinner. What could that mean? What was happening to him? When he had possessed the spirit and body of Eva, XANA wasn't much more than a digital fragment desperately navigating in the unrestrained sea of the internet searching for fragments that he lacked, dispersed in the ether. Hopper and the children had dealt him a hard blow, and even though they didn't completely eliminate him, they had managed to destroy his core. But then what? What exactly would happen to him next? Maybe it was that he hadn't taken possession of Eva, who was also prevailing over him. And that was a problem. Is everything alright? Ilita asked him. XANA looked, surprised, at the young redhead who was walking by his side. He had definitely been distracted and distant for too long and she had taken notice. Yes, Eva scrambled to say. I was thinking about what Jeremy said. Yes, me too. It makes me angry, sighed Ilita, taking her friend's hand in her own. XANA realized that Eva's fingers were covered in sweat and jumped. Disgusting human emotions. He'd had trouble controlling them for some time now. He hadn't the slightest idea why. All he could do was stay on his guard and find a way to enter the replica in the hermitage with these stupid kids. If that worked out well, he could return to Lyoko. And then, things would really change. He would no longer be a ridiculous cross between a human and a computer. He would rid himself of this insignificant girl and he would be XANA once more, and only XANA, indisputable lord of the virtual world and the future master of the real world. At more or less 6 in the afternoon, the Caddick library was empty. There was only Ulrich and Yumi left inside, sat one facing the other with their heads buried in their books. Yumi was concentrating on her studies. She was 1 year older than her friends, so she was in a higher level class than them, and the day after she would have a more complicated history exam. As for Ulrich, well, he didn't have any exam on the horizon, but he couldn't miss out on the chance to spend some time alone with her. Yumi lived with her parents not too far from the establishment, and during the afternoon, she didn't usually stay at Caddick. He absolutely had to take advantage of this opportunity. Ulrich raised his head from the books and looked at her. Yumi was tall and thin, and had long, black hair and 2 almond eyes that seemed full of intriguing things. She was dressed in black, like usual, and her brow was furrowed. She was gorgeous. Hey. What are you staring at me so much for? She asked suddenly. Nothing, jumped Ulrich, starting to splutter. I was thinking about Odd. Don't you think he's acting a bit too strange lately? Yumi set aside the history book for a moment. It's everything that's happening to him. He's in love, she declared. It seems like he and Eva are serious. Ulrich still wasn't totally convinced and he shook his head. It wasn't just that he was acting passionately for the beautiful North American girl who had been in their class for several weeks now. What's going on? Yumi pressed. You should be happy for your best friend to finally stop acting like Don Juan with the first girl that passes by and for managing to find a girlfriend. But do you realize how they look at each other? Insisted Ulrich. It always looks like they're sharing some sort of mysterious secret. And sometimes, Eva starts a sentence and Odd finishes it as if they were thinking the exact same thing. Well, that would be because they're made for each other. Ulrich sighed. He and Yumi were also made for each other. He didn't have the slightest doubt. Though he never could understand what she really wanted. However, despite the fact that he had known her for a long time, this young girl was indecipherable to him. Hey, guys, a voice called to them from the back of the library. And Odd was there with his usual lively smile and clothes. His hair, a bright blonde color, was shaped rigidly to a peak on his head as if he had been in a dynamite explosion. Speak of the devil, mumbled Ulrich, resting against the back of his chair. What are we saying about what devil? Asked Odd with curiosity, while sitting down straddling a chair and beginning to carefully observe a book that Yumi had. Strange, history had never been his favorite subject. Although, to be honest, he didn't particularly have one. Have you heard the news? He exclaimed right away. Jeremy wants all of us to meet up together in his room tonight. To your stations. Seriously, sighed Ulrich. Well, he never told me anything. Me neither, said Odd while giving him a slap on the shoulder. But he told Eva and Elida. Ulrich threw a look towards Yumi, but the young girl was already turned towards Odd. Well, I think it's a really good idea. Things keep getting more and more complicated. Yeah, exclaimed Odd while getting to his feet again as if in a rush. Are you going to tell us where you're rushing off to like that? Ulrich asked. Some question. I'm going to see Eva, of course. Ulrich rolled his eyes, while Yumi tried to hold back a small giggle. Jeremy's room in the student dormitories was one of the rare single rooms reserved for male students. It was a bedroom adorned with a poster of Einstein hanging above the head of the bed and his pajamas were nicely stacked under the pillow. However, the desk, unlike the rest of the room, was the definition of chaos and disorder, and seemed on the point of breaking under the weight of several keyboards, screens and other more varied computer hardware. Jeremy finished writing something and turned back to his friends. He looked at them one by one, Elida, obviously, Ulrich and Yumi, and next, Odd and Eva. Richard Dupuis, the young man who was 10 years older and who had been a classmate of Elida's at Caddick in the past, was also present. Except that Elida, trapped on Lyoko, hadn't continued to grow, and Richard, on the other hand, had, which is why he was more than 20 years old. He was the only adult amongst them, even though he was looking around with the same lost air of a little boy. All right, boss, commenced Ulrich, ready to start the party. Jeremy opened the closet that took up a wall of the room, and took from it a poster that he had made during the afternoon. He asked Elida to help him stick it to the wall with scotch tape. That seems rather complex, commented Richard. Jeremy looked at him with his head askew. In reality, the poster was rather simple. He had written down 4 key points and connected them to each other with a sequential algorithm. It was so much of a struggle to make it clear. Okay then, I'll get to explaining it, the kid rushed to exclaim when he noticed the perplexed look on Ulrich's face. Excellent idea, smiled Yumi. On the poster, several words could be read. Dossier First City Mirror Richard Dupuis. Jeremy grabbed a marker and highlighted the first number on the paper. I tried to organize everything a bit that we found up until now. I am convinced that we are facing a series of tracks left by Furman's Hopper, and now, we should assemble them like the pieces of a puzzle. In first place, Professor Hertz's dossier that contained a series of the Hopix code. The programming language with which Professor Hopper built Lyoko is very difficult, so much so that I still haven't managed to understand what these codes are for. Anyway, in the dossier, there was also an address that we followed. Jeremy stopped, marker in the air, searching for the second number. Number 2. A replica that contained a rough copy of the virtual world that I've called First City. What a great waste of imagination, bravo dear sir, commented Ulrich, provoking laughter. Jeremy, however, remained more serious. In reality, he continued, it's the name that Hopper was using too, in his journal. Whatever the case, Ulrich and Yumi entered the First City by using the scanner they found in Brussels to virtualize themselves, but they didn't manage to discover anything. The men in black appeared, protested Yumi. They were chasing us down. Jeremy raised his hand to call for silence. If you continue to interrupt me, we'll never finish. Let's leave the commentary for later, okay? Everyone agreed, and Jeremy continued his discourse, which he had prepared nicely. Alright, so, let's see the numbers. 1. The dossier. 2. The First City. Next comes number 3, in other words, the replica that Elida found in the Hermitage. Seeing as it's a journal that reflected upon several moments in the life of Professor Hopper, I have called it the Mirror. Everyone agree. His friends didn't even flinch. Okay, everyone's in agreement then. So finally, we arrive at number 4, the codes that appear on Richard's Palm computer. Each screen of data starts with the word Elida, but the rest is code written in Hopix. We don't know what they do. Heck, to tell the truth, I don't even know if they're a complete program or only a fragment of some more complex piece of software. But I'm willing to bet that whatever it is, that the code has something to do with Lyoko. Jeremy stopped to catch his breath, and traced the marker next over a line that went from point 2 to 3, from the First City to the Mirror. When Elida showed me the second secret room of the Hermitage, he explained I suspected something right away. And this is the reason that I prevented her from entering the second level of the journal yesterday. I wanted to confirm my idea. To give it to you briefly, below the Hermitage, there's a scanner that provides access to the Mirror, but there's no supercomputer. Elida jumped up. What are you saying? She protested. The journal is a virtual reality generated by a computer, so there must be a computer. Exactly, confirmed Jeremy calmly, but this computer isn't at the Hermitage, all that's there is a simple terminal. And this isn't all. Based on the descriptions by Yumi and Ulrich, I don't believe there was a supercomputer at Brussels either. In short, guys, we're speaking of a machine that's much more complicated, and much larger. It occupies the whole floor of the factory. It's impossible to just hide one here and there. And so, insisted Elida. Well, that's the big discovery, the First City and the Mirror are only sandboxes. Sometimes, programmers introduce a sort of operational core to computers completely separate from the rest. It's a protected space where any such experiments cannot damage the rest of the system. Precisely like a sandbox that children play in at the park. In English, it's like constructing a computer first, and then adding another smaller one. The others exchanged confused looks. They maybe didn't understand all the details, but the main concept was clear to them. The sandbox theory explained a lot of things that had remained in the dark the whole time before. Hopper made precisely that, Jeremy continued. Inside the supercomputer in the factory, he created two sandboxes, the First City and the Mirror. The scanners at the Hermitage and the primitive materials at Brussels do nothing more than connect to the supercomputer at the factory thanks to a high-security wireless network which then accesses these two cores. Stop, sighed Ulrich. You're starting to give me a headache. I get it, murmured Odd, on the other hand. The others stared at him, surprised. In general, the young boy was a genuine idiot when it came to technology. All right, let him finish. Eva then exclaimed. Yes, of course. Well, Jeremy struggled to continue. We would have shut down the supercomputer totally convinced that we had deactivated it forever. But in reality, we didn't realize that there was a hidden protection system that continued to supply energy to two sectors of the computer. These would be the two cores of the First City and the Mirror. And, in my opinion, the sandboxes weren't there by coincidence, they were tracks purposefully left by Hopper. To tell us, what? Asked Yumi. I don't have the slightest clue. But tomorrow afternoon, after class, we can discover what's on the second level of the Mirror. What do you all say? The others smiled and Jeremy relaxed. Chapter 2, Secret Agent W. The limousine drove at full speed down the streets of Washington. The street lamps reflected off the body of the car, leaving brief, brilliant yellow shadows. Inside the vehicle, Dido was looking out the windows at the calm shores of the Potomac River, separated from the roadway by a long group of trees. To see all this water that was passing through the middle of the city, opening a path between buildings, roads, and parks, managed to give her a sensation of serenity. The woman pressed on the button that lowered the window separating her from the driver. "Mark," she said to him as soon as the divider opened up enough to let her clearly speak through, "drive more slowly, please. We'll be late, ma'am." Dido checked her watch, 30 minutes past midnight. Mark was right that they'd arrive late to the meeting. But this wasn't important. She closed the divider, isolating the back of the limousine again, and fell back again against the seat. In France, it was 6:30 in the morning. It was time to make her call. She grabbed the satellite telephone attached to the armrest of her seat, pressed the button to activate the anti-listening device, and entered the number. The phone rang and rang for a good while. "Hello," a groggy voice finally responded. "This is Dido." Silence. "Yes," the voice answered slowly, then, suddenly more awake. "Ma'am, I have instructions for you. A car is coming to collect you shortly. Be ready." "What? But I can't right now." "A trusted source," Dido continued, ignoring the response, "revealed to us that Hannibal Mago is headed that way. It surely has something to do with Hopper. I want you to be at the airport when Mago arrives so that from that moment on, you won't lose sight of him." On the other side of the line, agitated noises could be heard, sheets rustling, and bare feet running on the floor. "I can't do it, ma'am," a murmur spoke into Dido's ear. "I'm no longer qualified. I don't remember anything." "You know everything you need to. You know that you've done very bad things, and you don't want your wife or your son to know. For this reason, Walter, you are going to do what I say. 10 years ago, you became a key player in this story, and now, it's you who will finish it. The men who are on their way to get you are agents of mine. They will tell you how to get in contact with me." Dido hung up the telephone without warning, waited a second, then dialed a new number. This time, the person answered immediately. "Agent Lone Wolf at your orders. Go look for Walter. I have a mission for you." Ulrich entered class and sat by himself at one of the desks in the last row. He looked at Jeremy and Elida for a moment, sitting together, then at Odd beside Eva. It wasn't fair. He and Odd had always been like two peas in a pod, the same desk, the same dorm. It's true that sometimes Odd was unbearable, and that's not to mention Kiwi, the bratty, little mutt that he called a dog that also lived in their room. But they had become friends. And now, he had been replaced by a girl. "Hello everyone," said Professor Hertz while entering through the door, dressed in her usual lab coat. She was a petite woman with a cloud of cotton-like gray hair on her head and round glasses. She was carrying a test tube full to the brim with strange black and white alternating discs. "A Volta battery," Jeremy immediately exclaimed from his spot in the front. The professor smiled. "That's right. Today, we're going to study Volta's battery, the first static electricity energy generator." Ulrich's attention immediately drifted elsewhere. It was much more interesting to think about what Jeremy had talked about the night before. They were going to spend the afternoon at the Hermitage, the cottage where Elida had lived with her father several years before, and then they finally were going to use the scanner to do some exploration. Even though it wouldn't really be him entering the mirror. After a long dispute, they decided what the team would be, Elida, of course, with Yumi, and Odd. Ulrich tried to protest, but Odd was adamant, so he eventually gave in, which was too bad, because Ulrich would have loved to enter the virtual worlds created by Hopper. Inside, he would no longer be a simple Kadak boy, and he would transform into a samurai, with a katana at his side, ready to face any danger. And he formed an invincible duo with Yumi. His phone started to vibrate in the pocket of his pants. Ulrich took it out and read Mum on the screen. That bothered him a little. Ulrich did not get along well with his parents. What could his mother want at such a time? Then he felt faint. The week before, a mysterious man with 2 dogs had tried to hurt Odd's father and Yumi's parents. Maybe. "Can I leave for a second, Professor?" he asked while raising a hand at his desk. "I have to go to the bathroom." His words were met with crazy laughter from the class. "Hurry up," was Professor Hertz's response. Ulrich smiled while running from class, and as soon as he had shut the door behind him, he answered the phone. Mom, did something happen? Huh? Hi, Ulrich. Sorry to bother you. No, nothing happened, Ulrich sighed. He was starting to get annoyed. What is it then? Why do you call me? He argued. You know I have class now. You had me worried. His mother continued to stammer as if she was trying to say something, but didn't know where to start. You see, she started finally. Your father should arrive in the city more or less in time to eat. He had an urgent business affair or something of the type. I don't fully understand. But seeing as he'll be in town, you could call him. You could see each other and talk for a bit. Ulrich's parents lived very far from the city of Kadak and normally, they never came to see him. The young boy sighed. This afternoon, he wanted to go to the hermitage with the others. He didn't have time to be with his father. Furthermore, they would just end up arguing like usual anyway. I don't know if I'll be able to, he lied, grateful that his mother couldn't see his face through the phone. I have too much to study. Ulrich, the woman's voice became quieter and softer. I know that things didn't go so well the last time, but you should give your father a chance. Promise me that you'll call him. Ulrich dismissed his mother as quick as he could. He then thought for a moment and dialed his father's number. An electronic voice told him that the phone he dialed was off or out of service at that moment. The sky during the first hour of the afternoon was still gray, but it was a bit warmer, and there was no rain. Ulrich put the phone back in his pocket. As usual, he had no way to contact his father, and he watched Odd carefully. You seem really happy. You're staring into space with a smile stuck on your face like an idiot. And how the heck did Jim agree to lift your punishment? Ulrich gave a slight sarcastic smile. Several days earlier, the gym teacher, Jim Morales, had been on the verge of finding out all about Kiwi, and had decided to restrict Odd from leaving the dorms. Who were you calling? His friend asked, pointing towards Ulrich's phone that he had just put away. My father. But he didn't respond. The young man shrugged his shoulders. Well, parents only lead to trouble. You know what I mean, right? How is your old man? Is he better yet? Odd staggered as if trying to recover some information from some lost nook in his brain. He's doing better, he then said in a monotone voice. He's eating again. But his memory still isn't back. He's going through the same thing as Yumi's parents, said Ulrich, nodding his head. They are disoriented, and they keep repeating the same phrases. Yeah, Odd confirmed. Dad keeps speaking of a certain Walter. He says that he sent him, and he keeps mumbling about some absurd story. Walter, said Ulrich, surprised. That's my dad's name too. At that moment, Odd signaled across the street. Richard Dupuy was headed towards the hermitage. With his hands in his pockets, dragging his feet. Hey, Richard. Ulrich called out to him. Let's go together. You should make a code name, said the guy seated by his side. It's true, confirmed the one in the opposite seat. Like us. I'm Weasel, he's Ferret, and our boss is Lone Wolf. I'm Walter, he answered, shrugging. Period. Just like Dido had told him, these men had come to get him by car. They had even brought him some new clothes, a black suit, a black tie and a black coat that went down to his feet. And a pair of sunglasses. Black, of course. It was ridiculous being dressed like this. They could be noticed a kilometer away. But he remained silent and changed his clothes. However, he wouldn't accept being given some stupid nickname like Lynx or Prairie Dog. The gun weighed down heavily on him, and the holster for the pistol made his armpit itch. How'd I manage to get myself in this mess? He thought. The truth was that he didn't remember. His memory was an empty, black hole. He remembered what happened since 1994 up until now, but absolutely nothing that he had done prior. All he knew was that he had done some deplorable things, and that these men in black and Professor Hopper had something to do with it. Lone Wolf, the boss of this little group, drove the sedan to the Parisian region and immediately headed to the airport. Once there, he traded several words with some police officers, showing some notebooks and authorizations, and next they were opening the gate so that they could enter the zone reserved for planes. They were parked behind a hangar, posted there, binoculars in hand and guns loaded. Around 1 in the morning, Weasel and Ferret went off to buy sandwiches. Walter's head weighed down his stomach like a brick. "How long are we supposed to stay here waiting?" he asked. "Silence," said Lone Wolf, lowering his eyebrows from behind his black glasses. They continued to wait. The sedan radio was actually a frequency scanner, a device to listen for radio transmissions from the police and the control tower at the airport. Through the opened doors of the car, the operators talking to pilots ready to land could be heard speaking short phrases through static. A message then caught their attention. "Tower here to Phoenix 1. You are cleared to land. Phoenix 1 here. Receive, Tower. Preparing to land." The name Phoenix made Walter tremble. All four of them climbed into a luggage car that an employee had forgotten in front of the hangar door, and Lone Wolf took the wheel. The Sector F runways were meant for private planes, the jets belonging to the rich and such. A long row of planes gave them some cover before arriving at the wide promenade of tarmac and scorched grass, interrupted by lines of yellow paint and luminous projectors that lit their path towards the planes. The men in black were hiding in the last hangar in the line. Walter took the binoculars and leaned towards the exit to get a look. A red, beat-up pickup truck that was entering the runway caught his attention. Driving it, there was a thin-faced man, and on the seat behind him, he had two dogs so big that they reminded him of horses. "Grigory Nictopoulos," murmured Weasel. "Dido was right. Things are getting serious," commented Ferret. Walter pointed his binoculars up towards the sky. He was waiting to see if Phoenix 1 would be an elegant private jet or a luxurious helicopter, but he was completely wrong. What was about to land on this runway was an enormous military plane with camouflage paint. "Look," he murmured. "A C-17 Globemaster," said Lone Wolf, raising his head. "This nasty thing can carry up to 100 or so passengers and 77 tons of cargo. Mago brought his whole army."
So we thought Mrs. Hurt was an agent, but Ulrich's dad? And what's up with XANA? It's sounding like he's developing some human emotional traits. So I couldn't work on it much due to taking on things with Discord, and the community center intruding, and writing my story. But trust me, this story is getting good. And welcome to book 3. You know, the more I start thinking about it, the more I want to re-edit the first 2 book videos and make them look better. More like episodes, kind of like this. And yeah, back in the intro, I borrowed that tower image from a user named Jojogape. So much credit to whoever that is. And I'll be using the tower images in the future videos, and they might change here and there. So anyways, stay tuned for more episodes of CodeLyoko book reading, and the download link to the book will be in the description. Thanks to the team at codelyoko.fr. And we'll see you in the next episode. See ya.